the SM Media Podcast Network. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of The Ref's View right here on SM Media Podcast Network. I'm Scott McPike. It's always a pleasure to be your host as always, and we do have a full house this week. We have Des Roach as always. Des, always a pleasure.
I'm very good to see you, Scott. I'm glad we'll get Phileas Fogg back from his worldwide travels.
Yes, and it is a pleasure to welcome back, fresh from his trip around the world, Steve Conroy.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well.
There's still a few corners I haven't visited yet.
Yeah, we'll plenty of time for that, I suppose. We fairly have a quiet weekend to look back on. Like, it all kind of happened in the Sunday. Saturday was fairly uneventful. Like, there was 4 games in the Premiership, 3 games where basically nothing happened. There was obviously big results for Celtic, Kilmarnock and Ross County. Before we get into talk about Sunday, well, Dundee Aberdeen, we've been discussing this before we started the show. Tony Docherty's interview, he basically came out and said that he thought for the first Aberdeen goal, his player Antonio Portales was his jersey was pulled. I've got to be honest, and I'll go to the guys for this. I'll start with Des. I don't think there's any. I don't see anything. I don't see a infringement on my end at all.
No, I didn't at all. I've actually wrote down in my notes, I've just put no referee issues at all.
Yeah.
So I think Tony's obviously he's just trying to grab something there, but nah, nothing on it for me.
Steve, is it just a case that Tony Docherty's result hasn't went his way? They're really beginning to slide, and he's clutching at straws a wee bit.
Absolutely. It never even registered with me that there was anything until you mentioned it later on this evening. So that I certainly didn't see anything. And I think we've said it before. Things are sliding a wee bit at Dundee, and Tony was beginning to be a bit of a blamer before this happened. But now he's got his own audience to perform in front of him, saying things like that. There was nothing there.
Because obviously you were off the past couple of weeks, Steve, is there anything that caught your eye in the past couple of weeks that you want to bring attention to that maybe we had discussed?
He's not had any eye on anything for the last couple of weeks.
Discussed. What do you think of the Diamandi red card? I know I'm putting you in the spot a wee bit. The one that was overturned.
Diamandi?
Yeah.
Oh, did I not comment on that? I would have commented, but no, it absolutely wasn't a red card. It was an appalling decision. I like how Des started replaying the Wally Vision clips about the culpability and accountability for refs. That was an appalling decision from Nick, and we've defended him. We've defended him to the hilt, and I think he still is a good referee. He went way down in my estimations there. He was given chapter and verse by Don, and forgive me, I don't know who the assistant VAR was, and we criticised the League Cup final debacle in the VAR box, but Don and his colleague played it absolutely perfectly, told them exactly what happened, told them exactly how to get out of it. But I can't see how it was anything other than arrogance and ego that he stuck to that decision. It was an awful decision.
And his reward for that, Des, was to get the Celtic Dundee United game on Saturday. Now, thankfully, there wasn't anything of note to talk about, but you mentioned, obviously, in the tweet, the culpability and honesty. Like, makes a decision, makes a mistake like that 2 weeks and then gets a Celtic Dundee United game. Like, it's a bit strange.
Yeah, it's very strange, and particularly when Willie came out right at the start of the season saying that he would treat players like managers would treat players. He won't come out and slaughter them. Absolutely not, and that's entirely correct. But and I don't want to say it, Nick was just put straight back in there to the biggest game in Scottish football at that moment in time.
Yep.
For me, that's wrong.
By all accounts, if you believe what we've read and what you hear, Alan Muir, the assistant, the VAR on the League Cup final was dropped because of his decision.
Yeah.
And that's where the accountability came from. If Alan made a mistake that was bad enough to drop him, what does Nick's count as?
Exactly. To me, it's a huge error, huge error. But there's been no accountability, and that's the word that we need to keep using: accountability. So, yeah, well, he's shot himself in the foot there.
Yep, and again, we have to defend VAR in that instance.
I think
VAR got it perfectly right.
Yeah, and do you know what? Don Robertson has come out with that with so much great credit, because Don Robertson has given him every lifeline to be there, every lifeline to say, I don't think that's a red card. Do you want to come across? The assistant VAR, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was at the time. They've given him every opportunity to rectify that decision. And as you said, ego, arrogance, whatever, he was always going to send them off. And that was ingrained in his brain at that moment in time.
Absolutely no way he was changing his mind.
The reason I wanted to bring up maybe accountability and maybe like why do people put themselves in this position, I just want to read Tony Docherty's comments on this incident, because he says something very interesting that I wanted to get your thoughts on. He says the first goal, there was a tug in Portala's jersey, and the fourth official said to us there was a tug in the jersey. Now, Steve, should the fourth official, whether he thinks there's a tug or not, should he be saying that to the Dundee manager? I would imagine straight after the incident.
Well, without being there, I don't know what was said.
Yeah.
But Des and I, both as fourth official, if somebody runs up to you and says, there was a foul, somebody did this, somebody did that, I would more than likely turn around and go, you're probably right. Aye, no bother. Okay. No bother. It's to shut them up. That pure and simple. So I would take that with a pinch of salt.
Des, anything to add with that before we move on?
No, I'd agree. It's fourth official. What you're there to do is you're there to try and just manage the bench. I used to always say, like, you're the manager, you're the assistant manager. He's the referee. I'm the assistant referee. His decision's final.
Yeah.
Aye. Yep. Okay. Absolutely.
Let's move into Sunday. We'll go to Tynecastle first for Hearts 1, Rangers 3. Very much a game where probably the better team didn't win. Rangers, who I thought were bang average, as they've been prone to be this season, limped through a result. Eases the tension a little bit for Philip Clement, but I don't think it. I think it just kicks the can down the road. But there was a couple of incidents that I want to discuss here. One that's got a lot of people talking, and that we have different opinions on it. We'll start firstly with the thing that's going about, the Hadji yellow card on Wilson, which I put in the chat earlier that we have. And Des, it's a yellow card. I think, to be fair to John Beaton, he does very well to let play go here, because it is an incident that takes a player out, but he lets play go. Hearts get a shot and target out of it. But do you think a yellow card's enough for
that? As I say, at the time, I hadn't seen it properly. I was flitting in and out of things. But when you sent it to our group chat, I think he's very fortunate. Very fortunate. When you look at it, it's coming with speed. When you look at Hadji's feet, his 2 feet are off the ground. So that could very easily have been a red card. And I don't think anybody could have any complaints about it.
Steve, I think it is. I think Des touches on something interesting here. I think the fact both his feet off the ground kind of make you think he's not really in control here. And I think a yellow card is probably, like, I don't think, well, obviously VAR doesn't come in and ask him to look at it, but I think if it was a red, I think if the referee had given a red card, I don't think VAR overturned
it. Probably not. I do think that one is, and we use our own terminology, high tariff yellow or an orange card. I wouldn't argue either way, but I wouldn't expect VAR, as you said, if VAR had come in, that'd be different. But I wouldn't be expecting VAR, because I think that one was a matter of opinion. Personally, I was okay with the yellow, but he was, a good Scottish phrase, but I won't say it here, he was awfully close to getting a red. But I wouldn't have argued in either direction.
Yeah, we'll move into one that has certainly got debate going. The potential penalty in Ciala on Wilson there. Look, well, there is 2 hands on the back of Wilson. It's not given. There are claims for the Hearts support, I beg your pardon. the Hearts manager has said it isn't a penalty. The pundits on Sky, Chris Sutton, Chris Boyd, James McFadden all say it isn't a penalty. Dermot Gallagher today says it isn't a penalty. Des, where are you on it?
It's a penalty. I don't, I don't really care what Dermot Gallagher says, Chris Sutton, etc. You can't have two hands on the back of a player and shove them, and it's not a foul. Let's strip it right back. Take away the penalty. If you shove someone with two hands, that's foul play. It happens to be in the penalty area, so therefore it's a penalty. It's a foul. I know we differ, but yeah, that's a penalty kick for me all day long.
Steve?
Can't argue with a word that Des says. That's a penalty every day of the week. And I know we're split 2-1, but I won't say who the one is. But nah, for me, that's a clear penalty, no argument. And I do think Mr. Gallagher, we've been at variance with him most weeks, and I think Chris Sutton he's stirring his own pot, so I don't think we could be quoting the guys. But we keep trying to say to people that will listen in any media thing that we get involved in, disagreement is all part and parcel of the game, and you're allowed to have adult disagreement and adult discussion. That's what it's all about. But with this one, I'm with Des. That's a penalty every day of the week.
Right. I don't think... I think this is where I get a bit like, what is the rules and what aren't?
It's not rules, Scott. It's not rules. It's laws.
Laws, I beg your pardon. Right, firstly, Des, right, we had the conversation last week with the phrase minimal contact, and we've seen, they're not the same, these two incidents I'm going to bring up here, but they both involve Rangers. The first one is the same player, Inciala, at Dundee, where I think we were all in agreement that's not a penalty. And then the one last week that I thought was very soft, the one that Rangers got against Queen's Park, the threshold at the start of the season, and this was brought up in Scotland and in England. I can't remember if it was Willie Collum or Crawford Allen said it, but somebody used this phrase. There is a higher threshold for challenges in the penalty area to constitute penalties. Des, what does that mean, and why is that being brought up? Because that's any defence of this has been mentioned. There's a higher threshold in the box.
Well, for me personally, I think if you look at the incident we talk about Rangers Dundee, Dundee Rangers, Inciala was involved in that incident, but he's looking at the ball the whole time, and it was a foot contact. That's going to happen. Like, football's a contact sport, so that's going to happen. Yesterday, he was in full control of his whole body, and he's put his hands on his back. It's not a coming together. It's him making that conscious decision. So I really can't see any way. I really can't see any way out of that one for me. I think that is as nailed on as a penalty as you're ever going to see.
I think there's two things at play. I think, and again, he does have his hands on his back, right? I'm not disputing that. That's clear to see. I don't think, though, there's a push movement where his force brings the player down. I think the player's on his way down anyway, and Inciala's his momentum kind of takes him towards the player. I think Wilson is kind of like going down and going out of position anyway, and Inciala kind of is. Wilson stops. Inciala's kind of trying to get forward and trying to get defending the player, obviously, and puts his hands out. I don't think Wilson goes down because of the push. That's the way I'm looking at it.
But what is a striker meant to do in that moment?
But what's a defender meant to do though? Like, his momentum's there. Like,
the defender's not meant to put two hands on his back.
Yep. And the ball is it's in a straight line. You've got the defender, you've got Wilson, you've got the ball. So the player had absolutely no access to the ball other than through the player. And it doesn't matter if Wilson's on the way down. If the Rangers player helps him on the way down, that's still a foul. And we've disagreed on quotation marks football movements. and we've had our disagreements. There is nothing in the laws of the game that allow you to put your hands on the back of a defender that you need to get a forward that you need to get through to get the ball. Sorry, that was I think that was a stupid movement. It was all right, maybe instinctive because he's got to get to the ball, but he had to go through the player to get there, and he was shoving him out of the way. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
And there's another one for me as well. If you watch every corner kick in world football, you will see the exact same movement from defenders all the time. Are we giving penalties for them as well? Because it happens in every corner kick.
Absolutely. We would have to do away with football if you wanted to dispense with that. But it's still, once you get through the immediacy of the budget banging and barging at the penalty, it's all back to normal rules. He didn't have the mitigation of a penalty, a corner in that circumstance. He just took it upon himself to go through the player. Hanging a fence or not, doesn't matter how soft it is. He still went through him, still had two hands on his back and gave him a hearty shove as far as I'm concerned. But again, we're allowed to disagree. That's
what about the VAR threshold that was mentioned as well? Because, and again, I'm quite interested to see what the VAR audio says, because I would imagine they looked at it.
They would, yeah.
Oh, they've got to have looked at it.
What was, I can't remember who said this. Somebody said it though, it wouldn't have met the VAR threshold though because there's not enough contact. Again, we go to that phrase, are we going to hear the phrase minimal contact? Like, what is the threshold for contact? We've said it for how long? Like, that's the issue here. That's
entirely the issue. Nobody knows what the threshold is. And certainly when Steve and I were active, we don't get set a barometer. Mm-hmm. We don't get told. It's entirely your own decision.
Yep.
But for that one, yeah, it's I know Scott and I are disagreeing on it, and Steve and I are agreeing on it. You can't put two hands in somebody's back and push them. See if it happened in the centre circle. Would anybody disagree?
That's what I'm trying to say. We've been told at the start of the season that there's a higher threshold for decisions in the penalty area.
I have to say, I don't remember who said that, but I wish they would stop saying stupid things.
Yeah, and
you can't have a different threshold for what's a foul in one part of the park and what's in another.
Absolutely.
That just gives us chaos. It gives us this sort of scenario. If it's a foul in the centre circle, it's a foul on the goal line. It's nonsense, and they just can't help. They can't help themselves but make things difficult.
I mean, you know how annoyed I was getting last week at the minimal contact thing. I think it's a completely nonsense thing to say, because if we're saying minimal contact, we're implying there is a certain level of contact that it has to meet. Therefore, you're just going to get a whole lot. If you don't come out and say what the level of contact has to be, you're going to get this every single week. People going, "Oh, was that minimal contact? Was that maximum contact?" What's the point in, as you say, scientific words that just seem to be kind of buzzwords at a meeting that just end up in a VAR room? It's just nonsense. But I think with this one, I think it would have been very soft if it was given. But I can see why you're thinking it's a penalty, it's a push in the back. I just think it's very, very difficult to see if you're given a penalty for that, and we're looking at corner kicks and there's contact like that all the time. You saw it with the Hearts goal. There was contact. There was 4 or 5 players with the exact same hands on the back kind of thing. Like, we're getting to that. Yeah. Like, you can't. For me, it's like, what's a penalty and what isn't? Like, I'm not like. I mean, there's people saying, "Oh, it doesn't touch him and all that." That's not the case. He definitely has his hands on his back. I think, again, as we said with the Dundee Rangers game, I don't think it's a coincidence that it's been mentioned a lot because Rangers got up the park and score again. The only time Rangers seem to have any sort of injection of pace is when they have a penalty incident maybe go against them, as they go on and score. Like, that's what happens. Like,
which is that just how Rangers are at the moment?
I was going to say that's an indictment of how they are now.
Yes,
they had that and 2 OGs.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Listen, Steve and I we're very confident, and we're not very confident. We are very steadfast. That's a penalty kick. People have got to look at the incident in isolation. Mm-hmm. He's got 2 hands in Wilson's back. That's a foul. It's a foul. End of.
Yep.
No question mark.
Okay. What do we think though in terms of what's going to like? Obviously, I would imagine it'll get covered in the next VAR review. Like, why do we think like VR haven't even asked them to look at it and kind of thing? Like, because it doesn't. If you look back, it's not like I think it takes about 5-10 minutes for it to be brought up. And I know it's obviously there's nobody claiming for it in the Hearts box, and then it takes about 5-10 minutes, and Neil McCann says, "Oh, he's lucky he gets away with it." But to me, it's like if it was, I can imagine. Well, obviously, the commentators of the VAR audio, or I can hear the VAR audio. Like if they were having a real debate about it, I would imagine it'd have been brought up straight away. So
you would think, but the only inference is that VAR didn't think it was a penalty either. On Sportscene, it was just a passing comment. They said maybe I can't remember which TV it was, but they said the review's over. So they've looked at it and just thought, nah. But whether you agree or whether you don't, that one had to be reviewed by the ref.
Yeah. It was Stephen McLean who was VAR, and Stevie's obviously vastly experienced. I'm amazed they never brought it back.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move into the other game on Sunday. St Mirren 0, Hibs 0. It's a very interesting debate, and one as long as we disagree agreeably, I think we're okay. I think it's good. I think it's a good balance.
Absolutely. And that's what we say to all the guys on next.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like it's again, like I don't get this thing of if you're saying it's a penalty, it's because you can't blue tinted glass. I don't get that. It's like you can look at incidents and maybe see a different way. Moving into St Mirren 0, Hibs 0. Not a game for the Des. I think we'll agree, not the best game in the world to watch. I don't think there'll be a lot of people going back and like getting a DVD of this to watch down the line. Like it was fairly uneventful.
No, that was 2 hours of my life when we'll get back.
It didn't look great, but there was a couple of penalty shouts. Obviously, the first one, Richard Taylor and Martin Boyle. It's a kind of long ball. Taylor gets in front of Boyle. I personally think it's not a penalty. Would you?
No, it wasn't a penalty.
Out jumped by a bigger, stronger defender. To be fair to Boyle, he didn't. Nobody complained about it.
Boyle never even made any complaints.
No.
The next one, the next penalty, I thought was brilliant from VAR. I think I'm glad that VAR's brought in for things like this. Penalty is given by the referee for what appeared to be a handball from St Mirren player Phillips. Then within the first, could you see it? Did you, obviously from where you were? Like, I know it's very, very hard to tell the difference between a face and a hand. Like, could you see it at the time? Like,
yeah, no, I could. I was sat right behind it. I was sat right behind my son, and I went, "That just hit his face."
Yeah,
it's not been anything.
If you watch it back, his face kind of like he gets a sore one. I think.
Aye.
Yeah, but very, very good use of VAR again. What it's there for. I think if VAR wasn't in place, Steve, I think would have probably been hearing about this for days. But
yeah, absolutely.
Very good use of it.
Well, that's what it's there for. Yeah. And in Ross's defence, he's made a mistake.
Yeah.
But you know what? We've all done it. Mm-hmm. And you can see what he's seen. Or obviously he didn't see it, but how his eyes told him it had happened. Because the defender had his arm up above his head, unnatural, making himself big. And Ross has seen that hitting his hand. But
he's thought he's seen it hit his hand.
Aye. But his brain's told him that's what's happened. And VAR has spotted it, got him over, turned it over, got the correct decision. That's what it's there for. So well done, Greg Aitken.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I was interested in, Des, because obviously you were at the game. Like if you'd seen it, like because I think if you're in a different area of the ground, you would probably think it's hit his hand. But again, it's good use. It's why we've got cameras in place, and I think it works very, very well.
That's exactly what VAR is for.
Yes.
To get factual and objective things correct.
Correct. Bit of a debut to forget for Hibs' new player, Alassane Mane, graduate of the Barcelona Youth Academy, then now playing in Edinburgh.
Barcelona to Hibs.
Yes, very, very interesting debut. Red card 13 minutes into his debut. 2 yellow cards he got. The first one we'll talk about. I don't think anybody's got a complaint that's a yellow. Happy with that?
Yeah, no problem. That was a straightforward yellow.
Yep.
David Gray is very adamant it's not a second yellow. He thinks he's very, very unlucky. Des, do you go along with that?
It's never a second yellow. When I was watching it, I thought, I'm not sure. But then when I came home and I watched it on television, he's not led with any brutality, any force. He just used his arms for leverage to get up. That's that's never a second yellow. And I'm really sorry for Ross Hardy, because Ross is one of our up and coming guys that we're trying to promote. He's just made an error there. I would have liked to think that he could see something different, but no, it's not a second yellow card.
The BBC report that I'm reading just now says it was a reckless aerial challenge in Killian Phillips. Steve, no, it isn't.
No.
It's not reckless at all.
I didn't see a yellow card, and worse than that, I didn't see a foul.
Yeah.
So who knows who's spoken to the BBC to put that out? But no, it was never. I don't know if he was still flustered from the penalty. Who knows? But it wasn't his best day at the office. But Ross is still a very, very good referee. He comes from good refereeing stock. He's on the way up, and he's had better days, but he'll learn from this. But I think we keep this on record now that we've talked about accountability and acceptance, and see if Ross's progression is hindered anywhere because of this mistake. Because we will be shouting loud about it.
And obviously, as well, as people may not know, like people are going, "Oh, why can't VR overturn this because it's a red card?" It's a yellow card, so VR can't get involved.
We can't get involved.
So it's something that can be overturned, even if you think it's right or wrong. But I don't think anybody will be losing sleep about watching St Mirren Hibs again. But yeah, I think Hibs' goalkeeper was probably the man of the match, Des.
Oh, it was great. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Jordan Smith. I think he's the fourth goalkeeper that played this season. Am I right in saying? I think I'm right in saying that. I think I saw that earlier today. I think he's the fourth goalkeeper Hibs have used this season.
Quite possibly. I bow down to your knowledge there.
But yeah, I mean, fairly quiet weekend. Obviously, things to get people talking. Looking at the table though, like I know obviously it's what the referees, but you're looking at that table. There's only 11 points between third and 11th. Like it's shaping up to be a very, very exciting end to the season. And do you know what that means? You know what that means? A lot of tight games, a lot of feisty affairs, and a lot of things for us to probably talk about between now and May.
Hopefully.
Yep, it's going to be an exciting close to the season.
I think the happiest man over the weekend will be Jimmy Talon.
I think he will be, yeah. I think just to get a win on the board, I think will be massive. Jimmy Talon or probably Derek McInnes, because they're from where they looked a few weeks ago, they're now close. They're not in top six in goal difference, but they've got a very, very interesting run of games coming up, and they could be. I'm going to place a wee wager. I think Kilmarnock will finish above Aberdeen in the table. Anybody want to make that?
No, I was just about to say I think will get them into the top six, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're pushing for European places.
I think they will. I think they're beginning to have a bit of a run.
But I think I know commentators curse, but I think St Johnstone are going.
They've gone.
The weekend they were awful, absolutely awful.
Interesting stat that we can maybe a wee exclusive here that I don't think anybody's brought up. A third of the Premiership managers now are European.
Really?
So yeah, we've got obviously a new Motherwell manager coming in today. Can you name the other three?
Valakari. Telling Valakari and also Vimmer. Who's the other one? Celtic, Rangers. Rangers.
Yep.
Rangers.
Clement.
But
Michael Wimmer is in at Motherwell. I like this. I know I like the fact now that a lot of clubs are like that's obviously the fourth club in Scotland now who have went to the continent, because I think there is a lot of talent out there. I'm glad it's not just the kind of merry-go-round that we see a lot these days. A lot of managers, Steve, a lot of teams are getting a bit ambitious and going and seeing what's out there in the kind of European stage.
It's a big world. Why not?
Yeah.
And the stuff that they were saying, Vimmer might not have been their first choice, might not have been their second choice. Who cares? We'll give you witness state evidence number one. Ange Postecoglou was reputedly about fifth or sixth.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You're taking a manager from Japan and going, oh, what's happening here? He's now in the Premier League with Tottenham. He just beat Manchester United yesterday. I I actually feel
that five-a-side team could beat Man United just now.
Steve, you couldn't beat Manchester United right now.
I'll give you that.
Postecoglou has had a hard time yet, but I still think he's a very good manager.
I think given time, he would turn that team around without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I think it's been a case. Again, you can't ignore the fact he's got a lot of injuries. They have a lot of injuries at that club.
Yeah.
And I think the big debate is the injuries because of the intensity of training?
It could be because I remember Celtic hitting a wee spell where they had a lot of injuries. I think maybe the start of the second season, I think they maybe had a lot of injuries. But I think a lot of people I think the one thing I will say about Ange is, and I've said it a lot, and if you listen to the Premier League show, you'll know what I'm talking about. He needs to stop being as kind of dry with the media as he is, because he's not. We've listened to him up here. I quite like the way he dealt himself up here. When things are getting rocky, I don't think he comes across great. I think
he's coming across angry, isn't he?
Yeah, I think if he cuts out, because he's a nice guy. Like not that I had many dealings with him, but a couple of times I was around kind of where interviews and mix zones and things like that. I found him really, really nice. So hopefully he gets it right. I think he's a really good ambassador for the game. So hopefully, yeah.
Okay.
But we will be back next week. We've got a full card of Premiership action next week. So we'll be back for that. All that's left for me to do is thank our two co-hosts as always. First of all, Des Roach.
Thank you very much, Scott. Always enjoying it.
Steve Conroy, thank you very much as always.
You're very welcome, and it's so nice to be back in Blighty.
We will be back next week, folks. If there's any decisions that you want us to have a look at, send it over to the rest of you on X, and we'll look at it. Thank you very much.